It was one of those bright, sunny afternoons where the warmth made everyone feel alive and happy. The kind of day that invited people to spend hours outside, laughing, playing, and forgetting about the stress of everyday life. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, the local community pool had become the center of attention. Children ran around excitedly. Parents relaxed on lounge chairs, and the smell of sunscreen mixed with the faint aroma of barbecue from a nearby yard. It was a day made for fun, for memories, for ordinary people to enjoy simple pleasures together. Among the crowd was a young boy, maybe around 10 years old. He had messy hair from playing outside earlier and a grin that stretched from ear to ear. Today he was particularly excited because he had been looking forward to swimming all week. He had been begging his parents to let him come to the pool, and finally, they had agreed. As soon as they arrived, he had bolted toward the water, his small feet barely touching the ground. He ran along the edge of the pool, dodging other kids, occasionally splashing water with his hands just for fun. The boy's parents were sitting nearby on a bench, keeping a watchful eye but also enjoying the warm sun. They smiled as they saw him laughing, carefree and full of energy. Around them, other families were doing the same. Some were throwing beach balls back and forth. Others were teaching toddlers how to kick their legs in the shallow end. It was a scene of happiness, ordinary but perfect in its own way. But little did anyone know that an unexpected twist was about to shake this peaceful afternoon. At the far end of the pool parking lot, a group of bikers had pulled in. They were a rough-looking bunch wearing leather jackets and dark sunglasses, their motorcycles gleaming under the sunlight. They had been on a weekend ride and decided to take a short break. Their presence brought a sudden sense of tension to the area. Even though they hadn't said a word to anyone yet, their loud engines and confident demeanor made a few parents glance over nervously. One biker, in particular, seemed to have a mischievous streak. He noticed the boy darting near the pool's edge, laughing and running without a care in the world. The biker's eyes followed him, and he seemed to grin, perhaps remembering his own reckless youth or maybe just seeing an opportunity for what he thought would be a harmless prank. Without thinking about the consequences, he walked closer to the pool, the gravel crunching under his boots. The boy didn't notice him at first, too caught up in his excitement. He kicked water at his friends, squealing every time someone splashed him back. His laughter was contagious, spreading through the pool area like sunshine. But suddenly, the biker was right next to him. Before the boy could even turn around or react, the biker bent down and scooped him up in his arms. The boy's eyes widened in shock and a terrified yell escaped his lips. "Hey, put me down," he shouted, struggling, his small arms flailing. The biker didn't seem to hear him, or maybe he didn't care. With a grin that was a mix of bravado and mischief, he swung the boy over his head and aimed toward the water. The boy's heart raced. He had never felt anything like this before. One moment he was safe on solid ground, the next he was hurtling toward the pool. A loud splash followed, and the boy plunged into the water, sending droplets flying everywhere. Gasps filled the air. Parents stood up from their chairs, some covering their mouths in shock, others rushing forward instinctively. Children squealed, some scared, some thinking it was part of the game. The boy surfaced, sputtering and coughing, his heart pounding. He looked up at the biker, who was laughing, thinking it was all in good fun. But the boy wasn't laughing. He felt a mixture of fear, anger, and confusion. He had been playing, enjoying a normal day at the pool, and suddenly everything had changed. His parents were at his side in seconds. His mother grabbed him gently but firmly, holding him close to check if he was okay. "Are you hurt? Tell me if you're hurt," she asked, her voice trembling slightly. The boy shook his head, still catching his breath, but tears were welling up in his eyes. The father turned toward the biker, his expression unreadable at first. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, the boy pointed at him. He just threw me in. I didn't do anything." The biker, realizing that the situation might not be as harmless as he thought, chuckled awkwardly. "Relax, kid. It's just a joke. You'll be fine," he said, trying to brush it off, but his words didn't calm anyone. The parents were worried. The other adults watching were tense, and even some of the children started to cling closer to their guardians. What was supposed to be a fun day at the pool had suddenly turned into a moment of chaos. The boy climbed out of the pool, water dripping from his hair, and clothes sticking to his skin. His small body was shaking, not just from the cold water but from the shock of the sudden, unprovoked act. He looked at the biker, searching for any hint of regret or apology, but found none. Instead, the biker's friends were laughing, slapping each other on the back, and taking pride in what they thought was a harmless prank. The boy's parents were furious, but they didn't want to make a scene in front of the other families. They quietly helped him to a lounge chair, wrapping him in a towel and making sure he was okay. Despite the fear and confusion, something remarkable was about to happen. Unbeknownst to the biker and most of the crowd, someone had been watching the entire scene from a distance. A tall, strong figure stood near the edge of the gathering, his eyes fixed on the boy. He had been there earlier for a charity event and had decided to enjoy the afternoon quietly, away from the cameras and the attention. But now he couldn't ignore what he was seeing. The man's presence was calm but commanding. He didn't rush forward immediately, but his gaze made the biker feel uneasy, as if he could sense something in the air. The man stepped closer, moving with purpose but without haste. He was tall, strong, and unmistakably confident. Every step he took seemed deliberate, a quiet warning that someone responsible was watching. For a moment, the biker thought he was just another parent or visitor. But there was something different, something that made him pause. The boy, still wrapped in a towel, looked up at the man and instantly felt a sense of reassurance, as if he knew he was safe now. The tension in the air shifted slightly, just enough for everyone to notice. The biker's laughter faded. He glanced at his friends, who were still joking and unaware, and realized that maybe this wasn't as simple as he thought. He had acted without thinking, without considering the consequences. And now someone else was watching, a person who could see through his bravado and challenge him without a word. The boy's parents felt a mixture of relief and awe. The man had approached quietly but with authority, instantly changing the energy around the pool. The other families noticed too, some whispering to each other, recognizing that something important was happening. The boy, still shivering from the shock in the water, clutched his towel tightly, his fear slowly being replaced by curiosity and relief. In those moments, the simple sunny day at the pool began to shift from ordinary to unforgettable. What started as a fun afternoon for families had turned into a lesson in awareness, respect, and the unexpected ways that life could surprise you. The boy had experienced fear and chaos, but he was about to learn that even in the most ordinary moments, heroes could appear when you least expect them, and it all began with a splash, a boy being thrown into the pool, and a figure watching from a distance, ready to step in, ready to protect, and ready to turn a frightening moment into something meaningful. The boy was still trembling slightly. Wrapped in the towel his mother had hurriedly draped around his shoulders. He was trying to catch his breath and calm his racing heart, but the shock of what had just happened lingered. His mind kept replaying the moment the biker had scooped him up and thrown him into the pool. It had all happened so fast. One second he was running and laughing, and the next he was plunging into the cold water, unsure if he would be okay. Even though he wasn't seriously hurt, his body still tensed every time he thought about it. Meanwhile, the biker, who had been laughing moments before, suddenly realized that the situation was no longer under his control. The laughter died in his throat when he noticed a tall figure approaching from across the pool. The man's presence was commanding but calm. There was no shouting, no exaggerated gestures, yet every step he took seemed to make the biker feel smaller and more uneasy. He tried to shake it off, convincing himself it was just another adult who happened to be nearby. But there was something in the way the man's eyes focused on him, steady and unyielding, that made him stop in his tracks. The man moved closer, walking past families and other children playing around the pool. He didn't rush, but he didn't hesitate either. Every step was deliberate, controlled, and purposeful. The boy's parents watched in awe as the man approached. They could see the difference his presence made. The tension in the air seemed to shift. Whispers started to spread through the crowd. People instinctively took a step back, sensing that this was someone who carried authority, someone who could handle the situation without raising his voice. The boy, still clutching his towel, looked up at the man. There was something reassuring about the way he stood, strong, confident, yet gentle. His gaze met the boy's, and for the first time since the splash, the boy felt safe. It was as if he could finally breathe again. The fear began to fade, replaced by a quiet curiosity. He wondered who this man was, and why he seemed so different from everyone else at the pool. The biker, on the other hand, was starting to feel the weight of the situation. He had acted without thinking, motivated by a desire to show off or simply to entertain himself. And now it was clear that his actions had consequences. He noticed the other families watching him too, some with expressions of disapproval, others just observing cautiously. The confidence he had felt earlier was slowly being replaced by embarrassment and unease. He realized that what he thought was a harmless prank could have seriously hurt someone, and that thought made his stomach turn. The man finally reached the edge of the pool where the boy was standing. He knelt down to the boy's level, his face calm but serious. "Are you okay?" he asked in a soft, steady voice. There was no panic, no exaggeration, just genuine concern. The boy nodded quickly, though his hand still shook a little. "I think so," he stammered. He just threw me in." The man's eyes moved to the biker, who was now shifting uncomfortably on his feet. "Who did this?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. There was no anger in his tone, but there was no mistaking the seriousness either. The biker hesitated, realizing that he could not dismiss this as a joke anymore. He pointed to himself, still trying to force a laugh, but it came out weak and unsure. Me," he muttered. The man didn't shout, he didn't push him or humiliate him. He simply looked at him with a steady, unwavering gaze that seemed to pierce through the biker's bravado. "Do you understand how dangerous that was?" he asked. "Do you understand how easily a child could have been hurt?" The biker swallowed hard. He had never had anyone speak to him like this before, so calm, so composed, yet so firm. He realized that the situation was bigger than just a joke or a prank. He had put someone else's safety at risk, and now he had to face the consequences. The boy's parents moved closer, still holding their son. "He's just a kid," the mother said softly but firmly, her eyes meeting the biker's. "What were you thinking?" The father added, "You can't just do things like that. It could have been really bad." The biker's friends, who had been laughing and joking moments before, started to look uncomfortable too. The presence of the man, combined with the parents' calm but stern words, had a noticeable effect. The mood that had been light and chaotic shifted into something serious and reflective. The boy, still wrapped in his towel, watched everything silently. He didn't fully understand why everyone had stopped laughing, or why the biker now seemed nervous, but he felt a growing sense of relief. He knew that the man standing before him was someone he could trust, someone who would make sure he was safe. He took a small step closer to the man, feeling the tension in his body slowly release. The man turned back to the biker. "Even if you thought this was funny, it could have gone very wrong. You need to think before you act. Children are not toys. They are human beings, and they deserve respect and safety." His words were simple, direct, and clear. There was no anger, no dramatic gesture, just a message that needed to be understood. The biker's face flushed, and he nodded slowly. He knew he had made a mistake, and for the first time he felt the weight of responsibility. The crowd around the pool was quiet now, watching the interaction. Some of the parents whispered to each other, impressed by how the man handled the situation. There was no yelling, no chaos, just calm authority and care. The other children looked on, some curious, some a little scared, but all sensing that something important was happening. It was a lesson in accountability, respect, and the importance of thinking before acting. The man then shifted his attention back to the boy. He crouched slightly, smiling gently now. "Are you hurt anywhere? Can you move, okay?" The boy shook his head. "I'm fine now," he said, his voice steadier than before. The man nodded. "Good. You were very brave, but remember, it's okay to be cautious too. Always be aware of your surroundings and don't be afraid to speak up if something doesn't feel right." The boy nodded, feeling a sense of pride and reassurance. He realized that even though he had been scared, he had made it through, and someone had been there to protect him. The boy's parents exchanged glances, silently thanking the man for his calm and careful approach. It was clear that he had diffused a situation that could have turned dangerous. The mother whispered softly to her son, "See? Everything is okay now. You're safe." The father added, "And remember, sometimes adults don't think before they act, but there are good people who watch out for you." The boy smiled faintly, feeling comforted by their words and the presence of the man. Meanwhile, the biker was still standing nearby, looking down at the ground. His friends had gone quiet, sensing the seriousness of the moment. The man didn't yell at them either, but his calm presence was enough to make them reflect. The biker finally spoke, his voice low and hesitant. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare him that much." The man nodded. "Apologies are a start. But you also need to remember your actions have consequences. Think before you act next time." The biker nodded again, this time more sincerely. The boy, now feeling a little more at ease, watched the interaction silently. He realized that the man had handled everything without anger or aggression. There was no yelling, no physical confrontation, just a sense of authority and care. It made him feel safe and protected, and it gave him a sense of hope that even in unexpected situations, there are people who will step in to help. The families around the pool began to relax again, sensing that the immediate danger had passed. Children started to return to their games, splashing water carefully and laughing quietly. Parents resumed their conversations, glancing occasionally at the scene but feeling reassured by the calm presence of the man. The atmosphere slowly returned to something closer to normal, but the lesson of the moment lingered in the minds of everyone present. The man stayed with the boy and his parents for a few more minutes, making sure that the boy was okay and that the situation was fully under control. He offered a few friendly words to the other families as well, reminding everyone to be aware of their surroundings and to look out for one another. His presence had a calming effect on the crowd, and people began to smile again, feeling that everything was under control. Finally, the man took a step back, giving the boy a reassuring nod. "You're safe now. Enjoy the rest of your day, but remember what we talked about." The boy smiled, feeling a sense of gratitude he couldn't quite put into words. The biker, still embarrassed but a little wiser, walked away slowly, reflecting on his actions and the lesson he had just learned. The crowd dispersed gradually, returning to their activities, but the story of the boy, the splash, and the man who had quietly stepped in would remain in their memories for a long time. It was a moment of chaos transformed into care, a frightening experience turned into a lesson in responsibility, and a reminder that sometimes the right person showing up at the right time can make all the difference. The boy, now wrapped securely in a dry towel, sat quietly on the poolside chair. His small hands clutched the towel tightly, and though he was still shivering slightly, there was a sense of calm returning to him. The initial shock of being thrown into the pool had passed, but the experience lingered in his mind. He couldn't quite stop thinking about how suddenly everything had changed, from a carefree afternoon to a moment that had felt terrifying. Yet in the middle of that fear, he had found someone who had stepped in to protect him, and that made all the difference. The man who had intervened, tall and confident yet gentle, remained close. He had watched the biker retreat, his friends unsure what to do, and now he focused on the boy and his parents. His calm demeanor seemed to spread through the crowd like a soothing wave. Even the other children who had stopped playing were beginning to relax, sensing that the situation was no longer dangerous. He spoke softly, ensuring that his words would not scare the boy further. "You're safe now," he said, "and you did nothing wrong. Sometimes people act without thinking, and it's not your fault." The boy looked up at him wide-eyed. His small voice trembled as he asked, Will he do it again?" The man shook his head gently. "No, not while I'm here," he replied. "And he's already learned that what he did was wrong. But remember, it's always okay to speak up and protect yourself if you feel unsafe." The boy nodded, absorbing the reassurance like a sponge. He could feel his fear slowly melting, replaced by a cautious sense of trust. The biker, now standing a short distance away, had gone quiet. His friends were whispering among themselves, clearly uneasy. The man didn't yell or scold them loudly, but his presence alone was enough to make them reflect. The lesson was clear. Actions have consequences. The biker shifted from foot to foot, a mixture of embarrassment and realization spreading across his face. He had wanted to show off, to appear daring, but he hadn't considered the risks. Seeing the calm authority of the man had made him understand, perhaps for the first time, that his actions could have seriously harmed someone. The boy's parents exchanged glances. The mother reached down and held her son close, brushing wet strands of hair from his face. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice tender. The boy nodded, and for the first time since the incident, he smiled faintly. "Yes, Father," still keeping a watchful eye on the biker, spoke in a low voice. "You handled that well," he said to the boy. "Sometimes scary things happen, but it's how you respond and who helps you that matters." The boy listened intently, feeling a mixture of pride and relief. The man then turned his attention fully to the biker. "I don't want anyone to feel humiliated," he said, "but it's important to understand the impact of your actions. Children are not objects to play with. They are human beings, and what you did could have had serious consequences. The biker swallowed hard, his face reddening further. I understand, he admitted quietly. I didn't mean any harm, I wasn't thinking. The man nodded, accepting the honesty but emphasizing the lesson. Not thinking is not an excuse. It's a choice. You need to be aware of your actions and how they affect others. The surrounding crowd began to settle, some parents whispering quietly to each other, impressed by the calm but firm way the man had handled everything. Children returned slowly to their games, though some glanced back at the scene, curious. The tension that had filled the air when the boy was thrown into the pool was gone, replaced by a sense of calm and reflection. Everyone seemed to understand that they had witnessed more than just a playful prank gone wrong. They had seen a moment of responsibility and care. The boy, still clutching his towel, felt a growing sense of admiration for the man. He had appeared at the right moment, handled the situation without anger, and made him feel safe. The boy couldn't stop thinking about how different the scene could have been if the man hadn't been there. He had been scared, yes, but now he felt protected. And more than that, he had learned something important, that there are people who step up when needed, people who act responsibly when others fail to think. The man crouched slightly to be at eye level with the boy. "Do you want to get back into the water?" he asked gently. The boy shook his head. "Not yet," he said. I need a moment." The man nodded in understanding. "That's okay. Take all the time you need. The pool will still be here when you're ready." The reassurance brought a small smile to the boy's face. He realized that it was okay to feel scared and take time to regain confidence. Meanwhile, the biker's friends were whispering, glancing nervously at him and the man. It was clear that they were starting to reflect on what had happened. The biker himself seemed deep in thought, his usual bravado replaced by self-awareness. For the first time, he truly understood the potential consequences of his reckless behavior. The man didn't need to continue speaking to them. His calm, serious presence was enough to make the point. The boy's parents, now more relaxed, watched as their son regained his composure. His small body was still slightly trembling, but he had stopped shivering from fear. The father spoke softly. "You were very brave, and I'm proud of you. You stayed calm even when you were scared." The boy's chest swelled with pride at the praise, and he looked at the man, wishing he could say thank you. He didn't fully know the man's name, but he knew that he had made a difference in his life that afternoon. The man, noticing the boy's gaze, gave him a small nod and a friendly smile. "You did great," he said. "Remember that being brave doesn't mean you aren't afraid. It means you face what scares you and keep going." The boy nodded, feeling the words sink in. He realized that bravery wasn't about showing off or taking risks, but about handling fear responsibly. He glanced at the biker, who was still watching quietly from a distance, and thought about how differently the day might have turned out if the man hadn't been there. The rest of the pool area began to return to normal. Children splashed and played carefully. Parents chatted on lounge chairs, and the biker and his friends moved to the edge, still quiet but seemingly more thoughtful. The man stayed nearby for a few more minutes, ensuring that the boy was truly okay and that the atmosphere had fully settled. He interacted briefly with other families, giving gentle reminders about safety and awareness, always in a calm and approachable way. The boy, now feeling safer and more confident, slowly stepped closer to the water again. He tested the edge of the pool with his toes, feeling the cool surface beneath them. His parents smiled, seeing him regain some of his playful spirit. The man gave him an encouraging nod. "Take your time," he said. "There's no rush." The boy smiled, realizing that he could return to the water at his own pace. The biker, now standing alone with his thoughts, finally spoke to his friends. I messed up," he admitted quietly. "I didn't think about what could happen." His friends nodded, clearly reflecting on the lesson. The man had already walked away slightly, leaving the biker to his thoughts, and the weight of the lesson was sinking in. It was a quiet accountability, but it was effective. The boy, still wrapped in his towel, took a deep breath and decided he wanted to try playing again, though more cautiously this time. He stepped into the shallow end of the pool, letting the cool water lap gently around his legs. He smiled, a mixture of relief and renewed excitement filling him. The parents watched with pride, and the surrounding families began to relax fully, reassured by the calm resolution. In those quiet moments, the boy realized that the day had already changed him. He had faced fear, been protected by a stranger who cared, and witnessed someone else learning the importance of responsibility. The experience had been frightening, yes, but it had also taught him valuable lessons about trust, bravery, and the difference one person could make in a chaotic situation. As he splashed gently in the water, he looked around at the other children, the families, and even the biker now standing quietly at the side. The scene that had begun with fear and shock was slowly transforming back into joy and playfulness. Laughter returned, albeit more cautious than before, and the boy felt a sense of gratitude he couldn't fully express. The man, now standing at a respectful distance, observed quietly. He didn't need to interfere anymore. His presence had made the difference, and he knew the boy was safe. The biker had learned a lesson, and the atmosphere had returned to one of calm enjoyment. The boy's parents nodded silently to each other, thankful for the unexpected help and the peaceful resolution. It had been a day that started like any other, with sunshine, laughter, and carefree fun. But it had also been a day that would be remembered, a day of fear turned to safety, of chaos turned to care, and of a young boy learning that bravery and trust can exist even in the most surprising moments. The boy had regained some of his confidence after the earlier chaos, but he still felt a little hesitant as he stood near the edge of the pool. His small hands clutched the towel one last time before he carefully placed it on a nearby chair. He glanced around, taking in the other children playing, the parents chatting, and the sun glinting off the water. It felt different now. The carefree feeling he had when he first arrived had been replaced by something new, an awareness of his surroundings, a sense of caution, and a growing understanding of what responsibility looked like. The man who had stepped in earlier stayed nearby, observing quietly. He didn't hover or insist, but he made sure to keep an eye on the boy, the biker, and the surrounding families. His calm presence seemed to influence everyone. The children played more carefully now, glancing up occasionally as if to reassure themselves that they were being watched by someone who cared. The parents relaxed a little too, still aware but comforted by the man's quiet authority. The biker, on the other hand, seemed lost in thought. He had retreated to the side, leaning slightly against one of the motorcycles parked at the edge of the pool area. His friends had gathered around him, speaking in low tones, clearly reflecting on what had just happened. There was no laughter now, no jokes. The biker's usual bravado had vanished, replaced by something heavier, an understanding that his actions could have seriously harmed someone, and that he had been lucky this time. He had learned a lesson that no amount of words could have taught him, and it had been taught by a presence he hadn't anticipated. The boy, feeling a mixture of curiosity and cautious excitement, took a few careful steps back into the shallow water. He let the water flow around his legs and slowly adjusted to the cool sensation. It was comforting in a strange way. The fear he had felt earlier began to fade as he realized he was safe. The man noticed this, his calm eyes following each movement. He smiled softly, encouraging the boy without saying too much. Sometimes the simplest reassurance was the most powerful. The man then approached the boy and spoke in a gentle voice. "Do you want to play, but safely this time?" The boy's eyes lit up. He nodded quickly. "Yes," he exclaimed, his small voice full of renewed excitement. The man gestured toward the shallow end of the pool, where the other children were playing. "Go ahead, but remember to be aware of your surroundings. You're brave, but being smart is also important." The boy listened carefully and slowly moved closer to the other children, feeling a little more confident with each step. The biker, still standing nearby, watched the boy. There was something in the boy's cautious joy that seemed to make the biker reflect even further. He realized that he had disrupted not just the boy's fun, but also the energy of the entire area. The laughter and carefree play had been interrupted, and he could see how fragile trust could be. The man's presence had reminded him of that responsibility. He took a deep breath and finally spoke to his friends. "We messed up," he said quietly. "We weren't thinking." His friends nodded, understanding that this was a moment of genuine reflection, not just a temporary embarrassment. The boy, now wading a little deeper into the shallow end, began to regain the joy he had felt earlier. He splashed gently with his friends who had noticed him returning and welcomed him back with smiles. The water lapped softly around them and the sound of laughter began to fill the air again, though now with a sense of mindfulness. The boy had learned something valuable without fully realizing it: how to be careful, how to assess a situation, and how to trust that someone good would step in when needed. The man stayed near the poolside, observing but not interfering unless necessary. He knew that part of the lesson for both the boy and the biker was being able to act without someone constantly telling them what to do. The boy needed to regain his confidence naturally, and the biker needed time to process his actions and the impact they had caused. By staying calm and present without dominating the scene, the man allowed both to learn in their own ways. Parents around the pool began to feel a sense of reassurance. They noticed how the children were now playing more carefully, how the boy had returned to the water with a sense of awareness, and how the biker had retreated into reflection. It was a subtle shift, but one that didn't go unnoticed. Conversations among the adults quietly acknowledged the change. "It's amazing how one person can change the energy of a place," one parent whispered to another. "He handled everything without yelling or scaring anyone, yet the lesson was clear." Meanwhile, the boy began experimenting with small, playful jumps into the shallow water, testing the feeling of the splash and the coolness around his legs. His friends cheered quietly, encouraging him without pushing him too far. The man gave a nod of approval, recognizing that the boy was regaining both his confidence and his sense of control. It was important for the boy to feel empowered again, and slowly he was finding that balance between fun and caution. The biker's friends had started to disperse, leaving him alone with his thoughts. He glanced at the boy, who was laughing softly now, splashing water in careful arcs. There was something about the boy's resilience that struck him. The boy had been scared, yes, but he had recovered quickly, thanks in part to the presence of someone responsible. The biker realized that he had failed to think about the consequences of his actions, and the thought weighed heavily on him. He would not forget this lesson anytime soon. The man walked slowly along the poolside, occasionally glancing at the biker. He didn't approach him directly, but his calm presence was enough to communicate that responsibility and reflection were important. The biker felt it, a quiet pressure to consider his actions, a reminder that he had to grow from this experience. For the first time, he realized that respect wasn't just about words or appearances. It was about understanding the impact of what you do on others. The boy's parents watched quietly, proud of how he was handling the situation. The mother leaned close and whispered, "I'm proud of you. You faced something scary and came back stronger." The father added, "And you learned something too. Being brave doesn't mean ignoring danger. It means handling it smartly." The boy smiled, feeling the weight of their words sink in. He realized that his bravery had been validated, but that he also had a responsibility to stay aware. The boy's friends continued to play around him, and slowly, the pool returned to a lively, joyful atmosphere. The laughter was softer now, tempered with awareness, but it was genuine. The man observed quietly, satisfied that the boy had regained confidence, that the biker had started to reflect, and that the families were feeling safe again. His role had shifted from intervention to observation, letting the natural rhythm of the pool resume under careful attention. The boy decided to try jumping gently into the shallow end again, this time with both feet together and arms outstretched. He laughed as the water splashed around him, feeling the joy return fully. His friends cheered, encouraging him, and he felt a sense of accomplishment. It wasn't just about playing anymore. It was about learning, recovering, and understanding the balance between fun and caution. The biker, still standing quietly on the edge, watched this transformation. He realized that the boy's ability to return to the water with a sense of awareness and confidence was a reminder of what responsibility and care could achieve. He had been reckless, yes, but now he could see the difference between thoughtless actions and thoughtful guidance. The man had not only protected the boy, but had also taught a lesson to him without saying it outright. The impact of quiet authority and calm intervention had changed the energy of the day entirely. The sun continued to shine down, reflecting off the water and creating patterns of light on the pool deck. It was a perfect summer day, and yet it had been a day of unexpected lessons and growth. The boy continued to play, his laughter genuine and cautious, while the man remained nearby, ready to step in if needed, but trusting that the boy and the surrounding families were now safe. The biker remained on the edge, reflecting silently, and his friends had learned to pause before acting. Slowly, the afternoon turned toward evening. Families began gathering their belongings, drying off, and preparing to leave. The boy's parents thanked the man quietly, their gratitude sincere. Thank you, the mother said. You really helped him feel safe again. The man smiled warmly. He did great on his own, too. I just made sure he had support when he needed it. The father nodded, appreciating the subtle guidance that had been provided. As everyone began to leave, the boy waved at the man, who waved back. There was no need for words. The connection had already been made. The boy had learned about bravery, awareness, and trust, while the biker had learned a quiet but powerful lesson about responsibility. And the families had witnessed how calm, thoughtful intervention could turn a frightening experience into a meaningful and memorable lesson. By the time the sun began to dip toward the horizon, the pool area had returned to calm silence. The laughter of children had faded into tired contentment, and the adults carried the lessons of the day quietly in their hearts. What had started as an ordinary afternoon had turned into a moment of growth, reflection, and care, a reminder that even in unexpected moments, people could step up, teach, and protect without raising their voices. The boy walked away with his parents, smiling softly and still feeling the warmth of the sun on his face. He would remember this day for a long time, not because he had been scared, but because he had learned something valuable about courage, responsibility, and the importance of having someone watch over you when things go wrong. The lesson had been subtle, quiet, and human, but it would stay with him forever. The sun had started to lower in the sky, casting long golden rays across the pool area. The warmth of the day remained, but there was a gentle calm settling over the neighborhood. Children were still laughing and splashing, but the energy had softened. The boy, now fully comfortable in the water, moved carefully, testing the pool with a new sense of confidence. He had learned to balance fun with caution, and it showed in the way he played. His movements were deliberate yet joyful, and his small face radiated the happiness of a child who had overcome fear. The man who had stepped in earlier stayed at a respectful distance, quietly observing. He did not need to intervene anymore. The boy had regained his composure, the other children were playing safely, and even the biker had retreated into a thoughtful silence. The man's presence had served its purpose. He had ensured safety, taught a subtle lesson, and allowed the natural rhythm of play to resume. Now he simply watched, a quiet guardian, satisfied that everything was under control. The biker was still on the edge of the pool area, leaning against one of the parked motorcycles. He had been silent for some time, processing what had happened. The earlier bravado, the joking, and the laughter had vanished. Now a serious reflection had taken its place. He realized that his actions had consequences far beyond what he had imagined. The boy could have been seriously hurt. The parents could have been terrified, and the energy of the entire pool area could have been completely ruined. This realization weighed heavily on him. He glanced at the man who had intervened. There was a quiet authority in his presence, a calm that spoke volumes without words. The biker understood now that courage was not about showing off or doing reckless things. It was about taking responsibility and being aware of the impact of one's actions. The man had not shouted, had not humiliated him, but had taught him a lesson far stronger than fear or embarrassment could. The biker nodded to himself, silently promising to be more careful in the future. The boy's parents watched their son with pride and relief. He had faced a sudden, frightening situation and come through it stronger. He had learned to trust the right people, to act with awareness, and to find courage even in moments of fear. They felt a deep sense of gratitude toward the man who had stepped in, knowing that his intervention had prevented what could have been a serious accident. "Thank you," the mother whispered quietly, her eyes following the man as he stood by the edge watching over the scene. The father added, "He handled it so well, and he helped everyone see the lesson without making anyone feel bad." The boy overheard this and felt a small swell of pride. He looked around at his friends who were still playing cautiously but happily, and felt grateful for the second chance at fun. The day had started like any other, but it had transformed into something memorable, something that would stay with him for a long time. The man finally stepped closer to the boy, kneeling slightly so that they were at the same level. "You did really well today," he said in a gentle voice. "You stayed calm when you were scared, and you listened when someone guided you. That's what bravery really is." The boy smiled, feeling warmth spread through him. "Thank you," he said softly. "I was really scared, but you made me feel safe." The man nodded. "It's okay to be scared. Everyone feels that sometimes. What matters is how you respond. The boy's friends noticed the interaction and gathered around. They had been watching quietly, and now they looked up at the man with curiosity. He smiled at them too. You all did great. Remember to watch out for each other and have fun safely. That's how you can enjoy the pool without anyone getting hurt. The children nodded, absorbing the simple lesson. They returned to their games, now with a sense of awareness that wasn't there before, but still with laughter and joy in their voices. The biker, finally ready to leave the area, walked slowly toward his motorcycle. His friends followed, each of them quietly reflecting on what had happened. The man didn't need to speak to them. His calm, strong presence had already left a lasting impression. They had seen firsthand that actions have consequences, that thoughtless behavior can harm others, and that real strength is measured by responsibility and awareness. The biker gave a small nod in the direction of the boy and the man, a silent acknowledgement of the lesson he had learned. The boy's parents gathered their things, preparing to leave. They wrapped their son in a dry towel, holding him close. I'm proud of you, the father said again, his voice filled with emotion. The mother added, You were brave and you stayed calm. That's important. The boy smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment. The frightening moment by the pool had taught him something he would never forget. As they walked away from the pool, the boy glanced back over his shoulder. He saw the man standing quietly, watching to ensure everyone was safe. He felt a surge of gratitude and admiration. Even though he didn't know the man's name, he understood something important. There are people who step in when needed, people who protect others quietly without seeking recognition. That thought stayed with him, leaving a lasting impression about kindness, responsibility, and courage. The pool area slowly emptied. Families waved goodbye to one another. Children held hands with parents, and the laughter gradually faded into soft murmurs of conversation. The sun continued to dip lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It had been a day of joy, of chaos, and ultimately of learning. What had started as an ordinary summer afternoon had become extraordinary because of the lessons learned, the calm presence of someone responsible, and the courage displayed by the boy in the face of fear. The biker and his friends left without further incident, carrying with them the silent lesson that would not be forgotten. They had learned that strength is not shown through reckless actions, that fun should never come at the expense of safety, and that accountability is important in every moment. It was a quiet realization, but one that would resonate long after the day had ended. The boy, walking with his parents, felt a mixture of relief, pride, and happiness. The initial fear had faded, replaced by a deeper understanding of the world around him. He had learned that bravery is not about recklessness but about trust, caution, and the courage to face unexpected moments. The man who had intervened had shown him what responsibility and care looked like, and the lesson would stay with him for the rest of his life. The parents, smiling at their son, felt a sense of peace. They had been worried moments ago, unsure of what could happen, but now seeing their child safe, learning, and happy, they felt grateful beyond words. They had witnessed a transformation, not just in their son, but in the atmosphere around the pool, in the biker, and in the community as a whole. It had been a day that reminded them of the importance of care, guidance, and the quiet power of leading by example. As they drove away, the boy sat quietly, reflecting on everything that had happened. He thought about the fear, the surprise, the laughter, and the lessons. He remembered how it had felt to be thrown into the water unexpectedly, how terrifying it had been, and how reassuring it was to see someone step in calmly. He understood now that life sometimes throws unexpected challenges at you, and that courage, trust, and awareness are the tools you need to navigate them. The man, finally leaving the pool area, watched the last families depart. He felt satisfaction knowing that the day had been handled with care and attention. He hadn't needed to shout or discipline loudly. His calm presence and thoughtful actions had been enough. The lessons had been taught quietly, effectively, and humanely. Everyone involved had gained something valuable: safety, understanding, awareness, and respect. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, the pool was empty, the water calm, and the air still warm. It had been a day full of ordinary moments, yet extraordinary lessons. The boy would remember it forever: the fear, the relief, the laughter, and the guidance. The biker would remember it too, The quiet reminder that actions have consequences and that real strength is shown through awareness and care. And the families who witnessed it all would carry with them the reassurance that even in chaotic moments, responsibility and kindness can make all the difference. The boy, asleep later that night, dreamed not of fear but of confidence and courage. He remembered the laughter, the water, and the calm presence that had turned a frightening moment into a lesson he would never forget. It was a story he would carry in his heart for years, a reminder that bravery is measured not just by what you face, but by how you respond and the people who help guide you safely through unexpected moments. It was a day that started with chaos and ended with growth. It was a day that would be remembered not for fear or anger, but for the courage, care, and human connection that transformed a frightening experience into a meaningful life lesson.